It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to Ask SCW here on SCW on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave in the comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. Answering your questions once again in the wrestling community. And may I say before we get started, Happy New Year. Wish you the very best for 2021. Hope it is the year for you. Hopefully definitely a better year than what we've just had in 2020. But of course, it is a big discussion once again of wrestling topics. WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling. We're going to dive into NXT, the Royal Rumble. So plenty being asked on today's show. And like I say, if you stick around to the end of the video, you can find out what more videos will be released this week here on SCW. Just before we get started on the first one, the first video of the year was released yesterday. 15 bold predictions. That's right, bold predictions, let me tell you, of what I think will happen in the world of wrestling in 2021. I think it's a great video. I really enjoyed making it. Hope you guys will enjoy watching and listening to it as well. But without further ado, let's get into our first question this week for Ask SCW. And our first question of 2021 comes from Austin Whitley. And Austin, not the biggest fan of the upcoming Legends Night edition of Raw, the idea of it. He thinks that it makes the current talent look inferior. My thoughts? I kind of agree with you, really. Mainly because, I mean, it's fun for nostalgic purposes to see these legends come back. And of course, it is Vince's oldest trick in the book to pop a rating. It's certainly something he's been doing over a number of years now. Let's bring some legends back. It will pop a rating and it will bring more people's eyes to the product. In some ways, it's a good thing, and in some ways, it's a bad thing. And I agree with you that I think the idea is a bit tired. I think it's being relied on too often. Rather than having a Legends Night, I think it would be more impactful to have a legend come in to help a storyline for a special occasion, like maybe Mick Foley around Hell in a Cell is the kind of guy that's perfect to elevate that show. Someone around Royal Rumble season that's very good at winning Royal Rumbles, like a Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels. Those sort of people can help elevate. Where it comes into a good thing, though, is that all the legends under one night. It will bring that rating up, and of course the ratings for Raw recently have been dire, and of course if people do check in to say, well, Hogan and Flair are on this show, I'm going to see what it's all about, they might watch someone like Keith Lee that they weren't invested in before, see what they do on that show and go, hang on, I quite like these guys in the new talent that we've got now, I'm going to keep watching each and every week. The problem you've got is that if the legends go over the younger talent, not necessarily in a match sense, but certainly in segments, it's been done many times before where we've seen the newer talent, fall down to the old guard. It then makes them look inferior, like you say, which makes the idea sometimes come and execute quite poorly where it can be done in a better way. If you find someone coming in, helping the storyline, then it's not so bad. If you find that maybe you have 1, 2, even 3 big angles that lead into the Royal Rumble that can hook people and go forth, it's fantastic. If the legends are used tastefully, it can work. The problem is we've seen WWE's track record where they seem to just push the old guard instead of building the new stars. And I think that's where I feel you have a fear with this idea, and I certainly do as well. I want to see the future being built. Drew McIntyre is a prime example. Last year it was booked so well. I want to see it done with more superstars this year going forward. Keith Lee, of course, is in that championship match on Raw. What a place that we could have this on Legends Night. We might get a big rating if there's a great story to go along with it, whether it's a new champion in Keith Lee, whether we're building towards that big angle for Drew McIntyre's challenger at the Royal Rumble. Perhaps Sheamus potentially could be the one that could be there. Again, perhaps more of a, not old guard superstar, he's still in the current, but he's definitely been in and around that championship picture for over a decade. But perhaps a big angle could be put here, maybe brings people week after week going forward. Maybe it can help Raw. It's certainly, like I say, it's a hit and miss idea. We won't know until Raw's gone off the air whether it's been executed very well. I do have my nervousness about it, but let's hope that WWE have the ideas together, can knock one out of the park, 2 or 3 really big angles, build 2 or 3 big star making moments on this show. That would be pretty cool. What I don't want to see, like I say, is the legends going over these younger talents. Maybe someone like Angel Garza, for example, would be a prime example. Someone that's got a bright future going forward, and then he's put in there with perhaps one of these legends. Maybe he wants to chat up a Tori Wilson, and maybe instead he's actually knocked to the floor instead by Ric Flair or something. It doesn't have a good look. So for me, that's what I don't want to see when it comes to Legends Night this Monday night on Raw. Next question comes from Dan the Man Williams. Who do you think will be the next person to dethrone Drew McIntyre? Really good question, this one, and what a tricky time you ask me this question as well, because Legends Night, as we know, is tomorrow night on Raw. Drew McIntyre has a WWE Championship match against Keith Lee, and certainly we know that we're building perhaps potentially to a feud with Sheamus, potentially at the Royal Rumble. The Miz has his briefcase back as well. There's lots of challenges from every different direction, it seems, for Drew McIntyre. I'm really actually thinking myself that I do believe Drew McIntyre will get through all of those challenges, but there's certainly different ways and twists that it could go down. I mean, Keith Lee, if he was to win on Legends Night, the ratings would be higher than usual. That would be a big moment and a star-making performance to give Keith Lee the championship on that occasion. And particularly as well, if Keith Lee, even there's rumours of him potentially turning heel, what if he was to, do what some of the rumour people are doing on Twitter? What if he was to join the Hurt Business, for example, turning heel and winning the championship? What if Sheamus costs Drew the championship and Keith Lee wins it that way? There's lots of different ways and variables this can go around. If Keith Lee was to turn heel, I mean, he's been saying for a long time that Sheamus was the one to keep an eye out on, and Keith Lee could have been the one all along. Certainly would be an interesting twist if they went that storyline. I don't think that will happen. I do think Drew will overcome it. The Miz, like I say, with the briefcase, could be someone that could come in, try and cash in again. I really hope that that doesn't happen. I would like the Miz to keep hold of this briefcase. I feel that WWE perhaps maybe felt that they made a mistake doing it at TLC. They've maybe found a different place they could do this later down the line. So I hope it's not on Legends Night, but time will tell. Sheamus, again, like I say, a big great match between these two, a great feud. I just don't see it being the one. The one I want it to be, and it's the one I want it to be, is The Fiend. I think for me, although he's an attraction, doesn't need the championship, I think the big match that I want to see is Drew McIntyre versus The Fiend. I think that is the perfect WrestleMania match. And at the moment, if someone was to defeat Drew, I think The Fiend is the right candidate to do so. Will that play out? Probably not, because The Fiend now is booked as a face, just like Drew McIntyre is, so we'll have to wait and see. But someone will have to dethrone Drew somewhere along the way. And at the moment, I do think that the Fiend is the best candidate to do so if it was to go down that way. Next question coming from Carmine Rocco. Is there a specific match from any company you would love to see in 2021? There's a few, to be honest, but the one that really stands out for me is kind of almost a dream match scenario, but of course it would involve a couple of tweaks and changes in WWE for this to take place. I want Daniel Bryan to move to NXT. I think now he does a great job on SmackDown. I think he's definitely one of the faces of Friday Night SmackDown and definitely has a part to play on that show. But I'd like to see Daniel Bryan in NXT because I think in a takeover environment, Daniel Bryan can have those 30, 40-minute classic matches with some of array of talent down in NXT. And the one that I really want to see him face is Johnny Gargano. I think those two would absolutely tear the roof off of the Capitol Wrestling Center. For me, it has dream match written all over it. The technical prowess of both superstars would be absolutely awesome. And I do love Johnny Gargano's heel work, I must be honest. I do love the way that it's being booked at this particular moment. So for me, that would be a dream match that I would really personally like to see, mainly from a wrestling standpoint. And like I say, the right platform is an NXT takeover because them two there, they would get their 25, 30-minute match that they would be deserving of having, because if it's done on a different platform, they may get 10 minutes, they may get 12 minutes. It just won't be the same for them to tell the story that we know both of these have got the ability to do in the ring under that right sort of environment. And particularly if it could be at a time where fans are back, for example, maybe towards the latter end of the year, maybe we might get that kind of moment where we can have more fans in the arenas if all goes well with the pandemic in 2021, then maybe we can get this match in the right environment at a takeover with the fans screaming like we know we can, and this could be a real match of the year candidate. So for me, that would be one big dream match that I would want to see in 2021. Couple of honourable mentions just before I move on to the next question. I would like to see AEW against Impact Wrestling. I think that not necessarily two superstars, maybe it's cheating in a certain way, but the promotion versus promotion is something I am really eager to see. So for me, that in any format, I would be really keen on seeing. Another match, I mentioned it earlier, Drew McIntyre versus The Fiend, I think would be pretty cool. And from just a solo AEW standpoint, I think that if Hangman Page was booked correctly, I think that he could be the person to dethrone Kenny Omega 6-9 months down the line for the AEW World Championship. And I think that story has been told so well in the last 12 months. If they were to come and revisit this, maybe when Hangman Page gets back on some momentum, I think it would be perfect the way that it would come together and make, a dream scenario where Hangman Page could become the AEW World Champion. So for me, those are some of my ideas that I would like to see. I would love to know some of the dream matches you would love to see in the comments below. Mark Q, World Order of our next question now. And there are no Impact questions. Let's fix that. Well, let's do that indeed right now. With a loaded schedule through mid-January, culminating in the six-man tag with Omega at Hard to Kill, do you think we will finally see Impact talent on AEW TV? If we do, and you could only pick one to go first, who would you pick and why? And who do they feud with? Well, it's a very good question. I'm going to answer this first off of who I want, and then what I think will happen. I have two things that I want, and I have then one thing that I think will happen. So for me, what I want, I think a great storyline that came along was Jon Moxley being attacked, of course, before his championship defense against Kenny Omega, and that led, of course, to Kenny Omega eventually becoming the AEW World Champion. I would love that to prove to be an Impact talent that would have done that. And I still think that in what I think to what I want, that kind of happens in both scenarios. But I want it to be Sami Callihan to be the person that did that, because I think Sami against Jon Moxley has everything in it to be an absolutely epic, awesome feud. Something that actually carries on from the last question, something I want to see in 2021. And like I said, when I want to see AEW versus Impact, Moxley versus Callihan would probably be at the top of my list. I would love to see a knockout as well come to AEW to help just improve and help out with the women's division right now, because it's not getting enough time, it's not getting enough focus. You could argue though that with NWA coming in already helping out, that more focus is going on the NWA side of things rather than the AEW. So for me, if there was going to be a knockout or two helping out with the AEW women's division, I want it to be for the benefit of AEW, not just to bolster another company's championship. So as much as I want to see Deonna Purrazzo come in, I think her versus Shida again would be a perfect match, a dream match that I would want to see. At the same time, I want to make sure that it helps out with AEW and doesn't just benefit Impact Wrestling, because AEW, their weakest point right now is the women's division. There's no secret about it. It's something that will take time to improve, but AEW needs to make sure that the focus and the main focus of that division, if they're going to work with other companies, is still that AEW Women's Championship, especially when it's on Dynamite or one of their programs. If it goes where they go into Impact or to NWA, totally different story. It's role reversal. But when it's on Dynamite, it always needs to come back to the focal point, which is their championships first. Now, what I think will happen, just to finish off on this question for you now, I do think we are going to get the first people coming in based on who attacked Jon Moxley. Now, of course, it's no secret that Kenny Omega has reformed with the Good Brothers. They seem to have their old school feelings going on, like Bullet Club-esque with, Anderson and Gallows. I think they are the two that took out Jon Moxley, and I wouldn't be surprised if this leads then to the Good Brothers against the Young Bucks, because they want to have that match at some point, I imagine, at the moment with AEW or Impact somewhere down the line. But I wouldn't be surprised come Revolution time if we got a six-man tag team match. Again, Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers against Jon Moxley and the Young Bucks. That, for me, I wouldn't be surprised if that took place at the moment. If I had to make a prediction of what I think will happen, that's what I think will happen. But of course, the things that I want to happen, there's lots of different dream case scenarios of all of that, Revolution included. I'd like that pay-per-view to be AEW versus Impact, but maybe we'll get that somewhere further down the line, but maybe baby steps take us there, because there's no reason why we need to rush that feud. It's something that we all want, but like we say, if we get it in baby steps, we're going to just want it even more, aren't we? We're not going to get bored waiting to see, this crossover between these two promotions. So for me, I'm happy to see how it's going to play out. That's what I think will happen with the Good Brothers. But like I say, if I had my pick, I would pick a knockout like Deonna Purrazzo, or perhaps maybe my first choice would be Sami Callihan as the guy that took out Jon Moxley. Speaking of the AEW Women's Division, George Jones with our next question now. How would you rebuild the AEW Women's Division, please? Well, I mean, the thing is, what we do with the AEW Women's Division is that we focus on the women in AEW. Now, if someone else is going to come in from a different promotion, it's great that they're helpful. It does bolster the ranks. Thunder Rosa, has done so well coming in and helping out in that division. But of course, when you look at the people, you've got Britt Baker, you've got, Hikaru Shida, Nyla Rose, Serena Deeb, who is currently carrying the NWA Women's Championship. We've got other, younger talents as well, like Jade Cargill. We've got, Big Swole, Red Velvet. There's lots of other, talents there that are going to build up Anna Jay, another one, Ty Conti. There is talent there. It's just giving them the time and the platform to build. You need to make sure that they're given, significant time on TV, real storylines, and of course we're starting to get those storylines now, but they seem to be on TV once every 2 or 3 weeks doing those storylines. I want to see a little bit hint of a storyline each and every week that keeps me invested on what's going on, rather than going, right, we've got one women's storyline one week, then we're going to skip to a different story the next week, we'll come back to that other storyline 2 or 3 weeks later. It's great for long-term storytelling if you want to do it that way, but at the same time, when you see every other storyline in the men's division, a small tweak is done on their storylines each and every week. You want to see more given for the women's division. They've got the talent, there's no doubt about it. Maybe 1 or 2 big names, of course, wouldn't hurt, but for me, it comes down to time and storytelling. If you do this second program that they're going to have each and every week, hopefully in 2021, I believe Elevation is the rumoured name for it, then we've got another platform, and that needs to be built like, a SmackDown to your Raw, if you're going to take a WWE term, for example. This can't be Dynamite and Dark Part 2, because otherwise people won't find this program important. It needs to be put at a similar platform as Dynamite. If you do that, you've got 3 hours of TV over 2 programs each and every week. I would expect that you need to have at least 3 women's matches over the course of those 2 shows each and every week, and then that way you can start building something and really move forward with that AEW women's division. I think it's possible. I think it's there. The talent is there. It's just finding the right way to execute it. And at the moment, there's so much going on and so limited time with the 2 hours of Dynamite. They're perhaps putting favoritism to perhaps some of these men's storylines they've got going on. When they've got this second show, maybe they can put 1 match on there. They can take 1 or 2 of the big matches that they have currently on Dynamite, put it as an equal show here on Elevation. You've got more room to elevate some of the smaller talent, and more importantly, the women's division can get more of a focal point on Dynamite as well. Dynamite should have 2 women's matches, and that other show should have 1, in my opinion. Mike, at Tannerhabs Mike, for the next 2 questions now. With the Royal Rumble coming and the uncertainty and lack of crowd, what must WWE do to get the fans invested in the Royal Rumble? And do you see Kyle O'Reilly winning the NXT title from Finn Balor on January 6th? Or if not, do you see a member of the UE turning on Kyle O'Reilly? And as we go into that first question, Mike does continue to say that this ties in. The crowd makes the Royal Rumble, and now that we're looking with no crowd at all, will we hear of more rumours than usual for potential surprise entrants to get fans wanting to watch the Royal Rumble? That's a great question there, and of course surprise entrants should be involved every single year in the Royal Rumble. I did expect Sonya Deville to be a surprise in the Royal Rumble. That would be her return, but she just randomly appeared back on SmackDown this week. There probably will be some surprises in the Rumble, but I think the best we can hope for is maybe a couple of NXTs. We may get 1 or 2 outsiders, maybe 1 or 2 returns. We'll have to wait and see, but certainly the rumour mill goes every year for the Royal Rumble, so I expect we will get those. I think with everything, wrestling needs a crowd in general. So for me, I do feel a lot of the shows, in all over across the board, have been harmed with a lack of fan base, and sometimes does take a bit of my investment in way as what it could be. But what I would say is that I think that they pump the crowd noise in there. They have the Thunderdome. I do think that as a visual, the Royal Rumble can still look pretty awesome. And if WWE book a good show, and they've booked some good pay-per-views recently, I don't see why the Royal Rumble would fail under this moniker. And to be fair, the Royal Rumble should be better and more exciting for the person at home than most shows. So I do think, for me personally, that I think the Royal Rumble will be okay, whether it's with or without fans. I do agree that it does, the Royal Rumble is made a lot by the fans' reaction and stuff, but they'll pump in a 10 countdown to 1. We'll get a big whoa, we'll get a big this is awesome or whatever. If they want to throw those points in where they need to, they will do so, and I'm pretty sure it will still be an epic show when it comes down to it. I do think that perhaps I may have got some high expectations this year, but I do think the Royal Rumble after last year did a great job with both matches. I think that I'm looking forward to what they're going to put together for us here in 2021. As for Kyle O'Reilly, I had a feeling this question was going to come in, because you and I, sometimes we have conversations about the UE, and we've done it quite a few times over here on SCW, the idea of the UE breaking up. And one thing I feel you've noticed, which I've definitely noticed as well, is Adam Cole seems very adamant about Kyle O'Reilly winning the championship this coming week. And it seems almost to the point that he's almost telling us, I feel, through the camera that something's not quite right, and maybe Adam Cole, as a babyface, I'm not saying it's not worked, but they certainly have not utilised Adam Cole to what they could do as a face. I wonder if Cole's going back heel. I wonder if it's Cole that's turning on Kyle O'Reilly rather than Strong and Fish. And maybe it's just a simple case of the fact of almost like Evolution back in the day. Is Kyle O'Reilly the Randy Orton in this situation where the thumbs go up and then the thumbs go down? Perhaps it's going to be a little scenario. Maybe Adam Cole costs Kyle O'Reilly that match this coming Wednesday. We'll have to wait and see. I'm excited for it. I don't know if it will or it won't happen, but it's definitely put the food for thought in my mind. One thing is for sure, though, I do think Finn Balor, at this moment, I'm going to do a predictions video, but I'll give you this one now. I do think that Finn Balor will be retaining the championship. I don't see that going. I think that probably the long-term direction is probably Balor versus Cross. We'll have to wait and see how that will go down. But I'm really excited for this match. I think Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly, one of the best matches of last year, definitely on the TakeOver standpoint. And I think that they'll probably knock it out of the park this coming Wednesday as well on NXT TV. Dylan Ketchum with our next two questions there on Ask SCW. And question one, is being the Elite a better developmental tool than NXT? And question two, what is your favourite Brodie Lee moment or match in AEW? Two really good questions there. Starting off with being the Elite compared to NXT, I think both are great for developmental in their own manner. I mean, of course, NXT is its own show. It gives you the opportunity to do matches and do promos and build yourself ready for Raw and SmackDown later down the line. Of course, that's what NXT is meant to be all about before it's become the only third brand now, has its own entity completely. Of course, being the Elite is more based on a character standpoint. It's great for that. I must admit, with being the Elite, I'm not the biggest follower of it. I don't watch it consistently, or perhaps even regularly. I catch it on occasion when I've got the opportunity to. But what I would say from what I've seen of being the Elite, it's a fantastic tool for putting people over. It's great because it's on YouTube, so it's very easily accessible for people to go and check it out. And as well as that, it gets a lot of characters over. They have a lot of fun with what they do on those shows. And from that point of view, people attach themselves to those characters when it comes onto TV. Some of those characters have got over big style from things they've done on Being the Elite. So certainly, it is an important platform, Being the Elite. Is it better than NXT? I mean, character over in-ring work, for me, is a big age-old argument. I would say if you've got a great character, that is more important than being the polished in-ring superstar that can do, 4 or 5 somersaults before landing your splash. Character is more important of the two. But what I would say is that both equally are very important in development for a character, in-ring performer. I think both have their pros and I think both are very good. Let's talk about my favourite Brodie Lee match moment from AEW. In fact, 3 spring to mind, so I'm going to mention all of them here for you today. Brodie Lee, my first one has to be the Double or Nothing AEW World Championship match against Jon Moxley, because this was the night that, Brodie Lee finally got the opportunity to be on a major pay-per-view in the World Championship match, and it was a great match as well. It was, it justified everything that we thought with Brodie Lee over the years. Someone had been overlooked in his early part of his career. When he got to AEW, he finally got to stand on his own 2 feet, be on a major pay-per-view in a great match against Jon Moxley. It was a losing effort on the night, but looking at it, for me, this was something that I think will be well remembered and something that a lot of AEW fans will look back on. The second match that really comes to mind is winning the TNT Championship against Cody. Not for the match itself, but it comes under almost like the moment because it felt so important. It put the Dark Order over massively. The fact that Cody had been defending this championship week after week after week. Brodie picked his time. He came in and he destroyed Cody. It was a dominant match. There was not even a single bit of offense from Cody, and he won the championship within 3 minutes. And for me, this was the moment where you thought, you know what? Brodie isn't just here. He's going to be, you knew he was going on to bigger and better things, but you just felt to yourself at that time that the Dark Order, for me, had been a stable that I wasn't so invested in until Brodie Lee had come in. But at this point, I went, wow, I'm taking the Dark Order a lot more seriously. This was a big moment for me, and of course was a crowning moment as well for Brodie Lee to be the TNT champion. Only the second ever TNT champion, of course, was in history. And of course, the last one has to be that famous dog collar match against Cody, which was a 5-star match on Dynamite. It was the first time on I think TNT in well over 40 odd years or something like that. They promoted it at the time, and it was a 5-star match. It was amazing to watch, and sadly, I think was one of, if not the last match Brodie Lee ever had. And for me, that was an epic encounter. If anything, you look and say that Brodie got more out of defeat in that match than you can do, as much as you can do anyway, with victory. Both of those performers put on a hell of a show. Definitely is up there with one of my favourite Brodie Lee matches of all time. Certainly one of my favourite matches of last year, and I would say that certainly was probably even better than the TLC match that Brodie had under his Luke Harper gimmick against Dolph Ziggler back in 2014, which of course was another epic match that was in Brodie Lee's career. But for me to be a standout, if I had to pick one, I will go with that match against Cody, the one, of course, which was the dog collar match where he lost the TNT Championship, because for me, it was one of the biggest matches of the year. It certainly means a hell of a lot more after the recent events of what's happened. And yeah, it's definitely my favourite when you look back at his career in AEW. Going to tackle your first question, Noob, and then we'll go on to the others later. But your first question, what are your thoughts on Brodie Lee tribute episode on AEW Dynamite? I want to say that, as you probably noticed in the last question, I'm still in shock with this whole thing. I do find that, for me, the whole thing, it still hasn't hit home of what's actually happened. And watching that tribute show, it was done so tastefully, beautifully. I think AEW really put on an amazing show. They of course, Brodie had this amazing following with the fan base and wrestlers, and it felt that he, was a big family man, and also, everyone in that locker room really had a lot of time for Brodie, and you could really see through the tributes, the emotion that come from everyone coming through the curtain wanted to put on a great show for Brodie. I think that the whole way that show was put together, where every Dark Order member was picking up victory after victory throughout the entire evening. This show is not about building angles and storylines and stuff like that. It was about giving, arguably, the people what they want. They wanted to see Dark Order members in the ring and picking up victories. So I think it was very well put together, as booked with matches as a tribute show. What I think was really tasteful as well is the fact that Brodie Jr. actually picked the main event. I think what a way to do that. It was such, hats off and respect has to go to AEW for that, because you look at it and say that Brodie Jr., they wanted to give him the best experience possible. Such a difficult time for his family. The heart just goes out. I mean, he's 41 years old. What do you say? It's definitely too young. You think about the family, and thoughts, do go with the family and friends and performers and stuff like that. And the fact that they did their best to try and give that family, the best night possible, for me was, you could really see it. And for me, some great moments with that. The fact Roman as well made the special appearance on the night as well, I think was really, really nice. And like I said, a lot of touching tributes. It was definitely beautifully done. And even at the end of the night there, retiring that form of the TNT Championship, saying that will be Brodie's forever, and also leaving the boots in the ring. There's certainly, it had reminiscence of previous times when we've seen this, which of course has thankfully been many years with the likes of Owen Hart and Eddie Guerrero. But this was done very, very well. It was a beautiful show. It's just a shame that we unfortunately had to see with the events that have happened that this had to be, that Brodie couldn't still be here with us. But still, it was very well put together. And yeah, it's I think they did a great job for Dynamite. They really, really did. A lot of love and respect to Tony Khan and to everyone in AEW for that. Let's go with the other questions now from Noob and Co. Will WrestleMania 37 be the perfect place for Sasha Banks and Asuka to have their own WrestleMania moments? And question 3, 5 best and 5 worst moments in wrestling in 2020. Well, first off, I do think that Sasha and Asuka will have respective moments at WrestleMania. What matches they will be, of course, remains to be seen. I will give you a sneak peek ahead because, of course, I am going to do a video this week, probably looking at the WrestleMania card of what I think is going to be in place as of right now. I think Sasha Banks against Bianca Belair is a shoo-in of a match. I do think Bayley will be involved as well. If Carmella can continue her momentum, maybe it ends up as a fatal 4-way. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think Sasha Banks will walk in the Women's Champion of WrestleMania, and I think regardless, I do think she gets her WrestleMania moment, because I think Bianca Belair, she's predicted for big things on SmackDown, but I don't think she will win the championship on her first opportunity at the moment. Of course, booking, storylines, time will tell. 3 or 4 months is a long time away, and certainly a lot can change between now and then. But right now, I would say Sasha Banks would walk in the champion. I think she will walk out the champion. Sasha, she's had a lot of short runs as champion. I think this is going to be the established long title reign of Sasha Banks' career. So I expect her to have a long and meaningful reign. So I expect she gets that WrestleMania moment this upcoming year. As for Asuka, the question for me is, does she walk into WrestleMania as the champion? I do have a sneaky feeling that this Women's Tag Team Championship run with Charlotte, is probably going to end a bit sour. I do think that Charlotte is probably using Asuka with this championship run to then eventually get herself back into the championship picture. Does it lead to Asuka against Charlotte at WrestleMania again? Will we get perhaps a different match, perhaps with Alexa Bliss? I did tease on my video yesterday, I'm going to give spoilers away from other videos here, that Ronda Rousey could potentially make a one-off appearance before her contract completely expires from WWE. Of course, she's not been in the ring now for a couple of years. What a great showcase match that would be to have Ronda Rousey against Asuka. I think that would be a money match, because we're not going to get Ronda against Becky Lynch. That's just, for me, I don't see that one happening. Charlotte Flair, we've had it before. It's not necessary to do it again, in my opinion. So for me, I think Asuka against Ronda would work really, really well. And from that as well, I would turn and say it's a WrestleMania moment in itself. It would be a massive, big deal. This would be like one of the main events of the night. So I think win, lose or draw, I think Asuka would get that WrestleMania moment from that. But of course, if Ronda's coming in for one night and not sticking around, your right booking move would be to put Asuka over, in my opinion. Best and worst moments then of 2020. And of course, I'm trying to keep this as an on-screen kind of thing rather than off-screen, because of course there are different circumstances, of course, with the pandemic and no fans, people losing their jobs. Unfortunately, as we've mentioned in previous questions, some people no longer with us. Of course, those things come into play, but of course, we're going to focus mainly on creative of what we've seen on TV and also with actual moments and matches that we've seen. So, 5 of the best. The first one that stands out for me has to be Drew McIntyre, the major success story of 2020. The fact he was booked like a star from the Royal Rumble match. That Royal Rumble match was arguably one of the best Royal Rumble matches ever. So, great job in general for that. Makes me hyped for this year's Rumble alone on the way that last year's was booked. The fact we had a new star built in Drew McIntyre. The fact he, went on to become WWE champion, defeating Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania in 5 minutes, carrying the championship for a lot of the year, losing the championship, but then more importantly, winning it back. It just feels like Drew McIntyre right now is a main eventer, and it will not change with that. I do think that with Drew McIntyre, he's here to stay. He's going to be a ready-made main eventer in WWE for years to come. One other one, of course, number 2 will be Roman Reigns' return, heel turn. That character for me is just awesome. I'm invested in SmackDown so much more just on what Roman Reigns is doing alone. That feud he's got going on, the bloodline stuff with Jey Uso, his feuds just in general, everything that Roman Reigns currently touches turns into gold. So for me right now, I do think that WWE, one thing they've got majorly right is their champions, and the fact that the way they're being booked. Even their match at Survivor Series as well was pretty darn awesome. I will say that as well, my favourite match of the year has to come down to the Young Bucks against Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. That was at Revolution AEW. I think that was an awesome match between those two as a tag team, and the storyline that built throughout the whole calendar year between Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, the fact that it linked as well with the Bucks, FTR, and that whole sort of scenario. For me, as a storytelling, that was some of the best of the entire calendar year, so I really, really enjoyed that. I will give a shout as well, cinematic matches. They will probably be featured further on in this question, but there's been some great cinematic matches, particularly the Boneyard match was one that really stood out for me, and of course that ended up being The Undertaker's last match to this point anyway, and of course we've had the farewell of The Undertaker after 30 years, and of course a lot of respect to the dead man for that. And of course I want to give a shout as well to the Last Ride documentary series. I thought that was pretty awesome as well. So yeah, I think cinematic matches have been awesome. The Boneyard match is one that really stands out. Stadium Stampede, another one. Of course, we're going to shout out to AEW once again here, did a fantastic job with that. And last but not least, Wrestle Kingdom. They do it every year. It comes to January 4th and you sit and think to yourself, I'm going to tune in. I'm not a big New Japan follower, but I will tune in and watch in Wrestle Kingdom, and every single year they blow me away, and I always sit there and think to myself, I have to watch New Year's Dash, and then I think to myself, I must keep up with what's going on, and unfortunately, it's the same as every year. I don't have as much time as I'd like to for New Japan, so I then don't come back in until it's usually certain points in the year where I've got maybe time at Dominion or somewhere like that. I will come and watch the odd show, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm buzzing as well for Wrestle Kingdom this year, but particularly the match last year, Okada against Kota Ibushi, was absolutely amazing. One of my favourite matches of the year as well, so really want to give it a big shout out for that. 5 negative moments, and we're going to start with cinematic matches because some of them were bloody awful. As well as they were good, some of them were really bad, and I've got to say, eye for an eye, the swamp fight, I hated both of them with a passion. It just goes to show some of this stuff is going to be hit and some of it's going to be missed. One thing I will give a positive spin on it, I do give WWE at least some props for trying to be creative, but eye for an eye, it didn't even work on paper for me, so the fact that we saw it in execution, it didn't work, was no surprise for me. Raw Underground, my goodness, I just didn't understand it. It just wasn't for me. The fact it just was fighting and there wasn't really anything going on. It was like it could. There were no real rules. It felt people just fought and whatever happened happened. And it's just for me. There's no clear. I like rules. I like standard of like if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and this makes sense for this reason. We didn't get that with Raw Underground. Again, to give a positive for the negative, we saw the likes of Dabba-Kato and Arturo Ruiz and Riddick Moss getting some moments on Monday Night Raw. Unfortunately, it didn't grow to anything further for those guys, and I think now a lot of them are going back to NXT, which is a bit of a shame if that is the case. As well as that, Retribution. Now, what could have been such a great angle? The fact with the Hacker as well. These storylines were so exciting, were so invested, and were so poorly executed. The fact that this could have been a main event stable, something that really took over the whole of WWE, it just didn't plan out that way. And I think I've said on many videos previously why I think Retribution has been a poorly done storyline, so I won't bore you to death with that here today. But for me, Retribution is definitely something that I just feel to myself, God, you could have done this so much better. Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara at All Out. That was a really scary scenario. The fact that Matt Hardy seemed concussed at that point with his match very early on as against Sammy Guevara. The match was thrown out, and then within seconds the match was put back on, and they went straight to the finish, and then they went to a very high spot in that Daly's place. For me, it looked really scary at that particular time because, of course, health and safety always does come first. Apparently, was given the all clear, the A-OK, but it did frighten a lot of people, myself included. I was a bit concerned on that. So for me, that does have to come in the top 5 worst moments of the year. And definitely from a storyline perspective of everything, of course we say some things feel a bit more real than others. This one definitely storyline based and definitely for me goes down as the worst thing of the year. Goldberg beating The Fiend. You built The Fiend up for nearly a year, the biggest attraction superstar. It probably was a mistake putting the belt on him to begin with because once you win it, you've got to lose it. But I tell you what, if you're going to lose it, we expected it to be Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Even if it had been Braun Strowman, I think it would have been understandable. The fact it was to Goldberg and the fact it was within a couple of minutes, and Goldberg, let's be fair, he's knackered after one spear. It just was an awful look and it killed a lot of hard work. So for me, that one has to top the worst moments of 2020 for me. And it really, it was frustrating to say the very least. But it feels that The Fiend has recovered a bit since then. But certainly at that point, that could have been a career killer had that have gone the wrong way afterwards. Wrestling is great with the next question now. Promotion you want to start watching but haven't got round to it yet. Well, I'm sort of cheating with my answer because I have watched it before, but obviously, as I said in the last question, would love to devote more time to it, is New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm a casual New Japan fan. I'm always there for Wrestle Kingdom. I'm there for New Year's Dash, and then I kind of go missing for nearly 12 months once again with the odd 1 or 2 shows in between. New Japan blows my mind every time I watch it. I really find the matches to be incredible. Sometimes I do find the shows a bit long in length, but certainly feel that with the content that you get, it's definitely worth what you see. So for me, I would like to devote more time into watching New Japan Pro Wrestling, but unfortunately with the current product we've got so many different promotions, and WWE have so much content on their own, which I do follow pretty much all of it. AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor. It's hard to find the time to actually, find another promotion, especially with, New Japan, with the amount of hours that they put into their content. And I do like watching some of the old stuff as well. At the moment, I'm following the old WCW stuff. I do want to go back and watch the early days of TNA as well. So there's a lot kind of on that wrestling plate right now. So for me, it is hard to find a way to juggle in New Japan as well. So if we can add some more hours to the day, maybe that would be quite helpful. But in the meantime, at the moment, New Japan Pro Wrestling is probably the one that I'd like to devote more time to if I could fit it in. Straight edge Josh for the next question now. And who does the best Tombstone pile driver, excluding Kane and The Undertaker? Mongo, McMichael, Steve Mongo, clearly. No, please not. What will Mongo do next? We don't want to know, but definitely a great Twitter handle. And of course, watching some classic WCW Nitro at the moment, certainly it is not Mongo. And to be fair, I'm not a fan of most superstars that do the Tombstone other than The Undertaker and Kane. But one I think definitely stands out. We spoke a bit about New Japan today. Okada does a great Tombstone. He's someone that makes it look legit, almost like the other two do. So Okada for me would be my answer. There are many that try the Tombstone. For me, they don't execute it as well. But for me, Okada, for me, in New Japan, I think he does a great job of hitting the Tombstone. For me, it should be the finisher rather than the Rainmaker, but that's just a personal preference. Last question this week comes from Jamie, the controversial one, Holmes. And first off, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Jamie. Thank you so much. I like when Okada lost his title to Omega and went through a broken phase. Do you think we're going to get a similar thing with Ilya Dragunov after he lost to Volta? The promo he cut and how he removed his contact suggests a big change. Really good question, this one. I must admit that I'm not sure what the direction is going to be with Ilya Dragunov. And for me, what I will say is that the Moscow Mauler has been building quite the reputation in NXT UK. He needs to do a bit more to perhaps get there with the American market, but I think that comes through exposure. I don't think he needs to change what he's doing, and I think with a lot of the NXT UK fan base, I don't think we want to see a change in him, but maybe we will see maybe a bit of a broken phase of him. Maybe they will tweak something and say, this is what we need to get him to that next level. What that will be, I'm not so sure. I'm going to be honest with you, because I like what I see with Ilya Dragunov. I think there's definitely something there. There is a talent in there that I think definitely could be, the NXT UK champion, perhaps at some point in 2021. But at this particular moment, maybe he needs to go back to the drawing board. Maybe there are one or two tweaks. Maybe there are one or two big rivalries to put him back up the pecking order. And maybe when the time's right, maybe it's when fans come back. Maybe that's the point where Volta will finally lose the NXT UK Championship, and maybe Ilya Dragunov will be the guy. Maybe the contacts have come out, almost like the gloves have come off. Maybe we're going to find a more, he's the Moscow Mauler, there's a serious side already, but maybe we get even more vicious side of Ilya Dragunov going forward. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching Ask SCW. As always, hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if, of course, you're new to the channel, subscribe. Make sure to hit the bell as well. Set the notifications to all. You can be notified when each and every video is released here on SCW. Coming up this week then on the channel, I did promise you I'd let you know what's coming up. Going to have the 10 breakout stars to look out for in 2021. First on Monday for WWE, on Tuesday for AEW, on Wednesday you've got the New Year's Evil prediction show coming up. And then we'll see going on further forward from there. But I'm looking to do surprise entrance for the Royal Rumble, and as well as that, I'm probably going to look at doing the predicted WrestleMania 37 card at this particular moment before we head into the Royal Rumble, and let's see how many we get right. But that's all from me anyway. Thank you for watching, and make sure to check out yesterday's video if you haven't already. 15 bold predictions for wrestling in 2021 featuring WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact, New Japan, and more. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Have yourselves a great day. Happy New Year once again. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube.com. Take care. Have yourselves a great day.